People are shocked over a demographic that was posted after a J-Hope concert. We have people talking about a weird animated tape being posted, and then we have JK and his body being talked about and trending. So hey Dumplings, it's Dave Desai, let's get into it. People are talking about JK's body recently, and it's not over a photo that he posted, but it's over something that he said, which makes people believe that he might be even more swole than what he once was. So if you're not aware, there had been a lot of photos that had come out of the military in which people saw JK's progress from the military. So his back being really muscular, his legs, his arms, all of those things. I don't know exactly what prompted him to go on to Weverse recently, but he went on to say that he is still there, and he is still active, and he was responding to someone. And then I guess he was done, and he said that it was time to work out and that it was shoulder day and he wanted to go ahead and do that. And a lot of people were freaking out about this because if you look at the old pictures that he had posted, his shoulder was already very broad. This is one picture that people liked to use where it showed JK's bare back, and people like to say that if you look at that, you're going to see that it's so big and that he's trying to somehow make it even bigger. Apparently the picture that we see is a little bit of a fisheye lens, and you can tell this because his arm looks really skinny and obviously disproportionate to the rest of his body, which he doesn't look that way in a normal picture. So perhaps JK wanted a picture like this because it makes his back look a lot bigger, right? But I don't think this is actually how big his back is. Now, of course, something to know, and I hate to be this, I guess, party pooper, but I don't think that his back is going to get any bigger. And typically men in the military only get big to a certain level. They're not going to look like bodybuilders, and they're not going to look like people who are much bigger than that, right? That compared to someone who might do this for a living and are attempting to get bigger. Many bodybuilders, not all, but some of them use substances that are not always steroids or those things that might be illegal, but there are substances that they can use to build mass. Those things are not allowed in the military because the point of being buff in the military is not to look as buff as possible, but to actually be stronger and at optimal health. No judgment to bodybuilders. I know this sounds a little bit judgmental, but this is not really a judgment, but more so just what's going on in that industry. And in order to be buff and to maintain buffness, you do have to constantly work out. You can't just stop working out and then expect to still have abs and all of those things. The way that the military people eat is also a lot of calories, so that's why you'll notice people like V or even J-Hope looking a little bit bigger compared to when they enter because they're consuming way more calories than what you and I might consume. However, after that point, they obviously do not consume more calories than that, and then they're not going to get any bigger. So we can expect that this is just more so a maintenance workout than one that is meant to enhance muscles. But nonetheless, it's shocking and maybe even a little bit jarring to see things like this happen, which I think personally, in my opinion, is really cool. Another thing that was a little bit jarring were people talking about J-Hope's demographic for his recent concert. A lot of people were not expecting to see a specific demographic of people at his concert, and some of the statistics that came out of who was actually there and what demographic those people were, I think a lot of people assume that it's going to be mostly women who were sat there and bought tickets. And that is correct. And I think it's a number that you would expect. It's about 93.4% female audience. Now the male audience is about 6.6%, which I think is pretty good. And a lot of people would still be pretty shocked by that number. But what was even more shocking about that number wasn't even that the male audience that was there was very young, like what you likely might assume, but they were a bit older. And everyone who attended, a male or female, kind of geared towards on the older side, which the statistic is pointing to the majority of people attending being in their 30s and 40s. And then less surprisingly, there were people in their 20s or even people around their teens that were in the audience. But those were actually way less. And in fact, those that were like 10 or maybe even a little bit older were actually not the majority. They were the minority of the people that were in the crowd. And then on the bigger side, there were people in their 50s and older, which I thought was really cool. A lot of people were very excited about this because they were saying that it was quite clear that the community has grown up with BTS and have continuously done that. And I agree. I think this is really exciting. I think that this will push the boys into two directions. They can either make music that will appeal to that older audience that they have, so music that they might want to listen to, music that they know will resonate with them, because obviously people in an older demographic will have different problems, or they can try to go a little bit younger, and typically that is when artists fail because people can tell that you're not that age. Someone who is a teen might not be able to resonate with someone who's in their 40s or 50s, and you can tell even if they have no wrinkles and even if they look really good, you can tell that that person is not a teenager, and it makes it a harder sell because it doesn't feel authentic, right? So I hope they don't go that direction, and I hope they make more music catered towards people that are in their 30s or 40s, like I assume most of you watching are. This will make really interesting music, and it's music that I think we have heard from the boys before, them talking about domestic abuse, suicide, and all of those things, but maybe this time it'll be more outwardly obvious that they're saying those things rather than just alluding to it. And then as the audience gets older, you can imagine that people in their 30s, 40s, or 50s are likely in a relationship. They might have a family, and so they likely wouldn't care if their favorite BTS member is in a relationship too, and things like that. This also could likely be the reason why we're seeing more of them alluding towards relationships and dating and having that sort of life, because they know that the older audience and their main audience around this time probably wouldn't care or wouldn't make such a big deal about it. So I think when we start to see the boys come out of the military, we're going to start to see not only a new era, but a more interesting era where they can be more open and authentic, because the audience always screams authenticity at them, wanting authenticity, but then when it comes to dating or anything that is authentic, they don't want to know that. And K-pop is notoriously known for hiding anything that's authentic and anything that's human with the artists, and they do that because they know that if they show anything authentic, the community gets really upset. What I hope to not see more of going forward is the crazy things that the community posts. There was this Sims animation in which we could see JK and V performing a nasty act, let's say. This is a fairly graphic act that I don't even want to post here or even look at myself, so there really isn't going to be no link. There really isn't going to be anything that points you into the direction of this clip. With that said, if people want to assume that what I'm saying is a lie and this story is fake and that I don't know what I'm talking about or I'm making it up, then you're welcome to assume that. But quite frankly, this clip does exist, and if you want to trust me on that and take in this information that I'm about to say, then do that. But if you don't, I totally understand. I'm not going to provide any proof though either way. There is this club in which it's an animation of the Sims character, and you see V getting down on his knees and doing an act on JK, and they're both completely naked. This is of course a little bit disturbing, right? Given the fact that while the majority of the audience in the BTS community might be a little bit older now, there are definitely still a lot of younger people that are online and on Twitter. And guess what? Likely the young audience is the one that's on Twitter looking through this type of content. So they're going to be the one that's going to see this. Obviously, this is a really bad thing, and discovering content like this at an age in which they may not even be allowed to watch content like this is going to be really scarring for them, which is exactly why content like this has that age restriction on it. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that you can look up the psychological studies and implications of kids seeing content like this. And of course, it's one thing seeing content that might be other people that they can ignore or click away, because I'm sure a lot of us when we were very young had stumbled upon this type of content online, but to see it of the people that they know or that they feel like they have a sort of parasocial relationship with, it's going to be more disturbing for them. And we're talking about kids at a potential age where they can't distinguish what might be real and what might be fake. Now this is obviously fake, but they could assume that this is something that is happening among the fakeness might be real, right? I don't know if that makes sense. I think content like this is fine if you want to put it behind either a paywall for your community or promote it among your friends in a group chat. But don't post it publicly, as I think a lot of people might not like this and you can definitely get a lot of hate. So that's just my 2 cents about this. I don't discourage anyone from making any type of content that they want if this is what they want to do. Just don't post it publicly for kids to see. Just don't post it publicly for kids to see. Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out Patreon for more videos. Link down below. Thank you to this lovely comment right here. Love you. Bye.